All right, welcome to another episode of Panakal Podcast for Geeks, a show about good friends hanging out, talking about the things we love. You guys all know my co-host, Andrew Sides, and our guest today is, how do you say it again? Nisnow.
Yep, Nisnow, or
Nisnow.
however
Oh,
you want
I
to say
knew I
it,
was going
yeah.
to screw it up the second we went live.
It's so good.
Sorry. We got them on today to talk about, I was trying to think of guests to get on the show, and Rin and I are in Scott's class together, and they've been doing their first set of conventions. So I thought it was kind of interesting to talk about, like, legitimately, like, I've been doing conventions for almost 10 years now. So, but they're going through the process of booth setup, ordering product, inventory,
Oh, so this is like your
everything.
first year,
Yeah.
like bootstrapping
Yeah.
up. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
my
I thought it'd be
first
interesting
year.
to talk about that and kind of get and like when I did my first year, I think I did like 3 conventions that year. You've done like what, 7 already?
Yeah, around that number, I can check the exact.
Which
Yeah.
is like, 9. I've
That's
done
good.
9 or 10 this year, which feels like a lot, and there was a year I did I think I did 21 or something, but I was also unemployed and I had extra time on my hands to test things out. But yeah, so like in class, last night in class you were showing your booth setup, which I was, also their booth setup it was like a 10 by 12 or something, which I didn't even move into giant booths till my like 3rd year, I think, or
Wow,
4th
you
year.
just jumped
I'm just
right into
really
the deep
ambitious.
end.
Yeah.
I see that. And you do you have a day job at all, or?
Yeah, I work as a software engineer during the day, but I do art at night. I'm trying to build up my art
Oh,
stuff
word.
more. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say you did a good job of having like the money I had to start was basically the severance I got from when I got let go from my day job, which was enough to start, but not enough for me to make big wave moves. I'm a little jealous of how many big moves you've made in your like first 8 months.
That's great. Like, yeah.
yeah, it's
Um,
really ambitious.
No,
I, I'm
it's great.
I'm curious. Have they all been comic conventions, or are they a mix of like comic conventions, anime conventions, other? What has it
So
been a mix of so far?
yeah, so they've all been really small. The first one that I did was back in February or something, but it was like a maker's fair back in my alma mater, the college I graduated from. So I did that
Mhm.
twice this year so far. It was very tiny, just a 6 feet table with a bunch of mostly other students, but we also had other alumni, staff, and people there. It's pretty good. Like I was surprised at the traffic flow because I guess it was in like the student hub, student union building, so we had a lot of students going through it. So I guess that was really good traffic, and I was genuinely surprised at like, oh, this is really fun. So I
Hmm.
did that little makers fair twice. Another one was Norwest Con, which was like a more art show. That was alright. And then did like a small, very, very small anime convention over in Eastern Washington. I'm from Seattle, Washington, by the way. And then last week was Rose City Comic Con. That was the largest one I did so far.
Oh yeah, over in Portland, right?
Portland,
Yes,
yeah.
in Portland.
Yeah.
And
So a lot of them were small.
I haven't done Rose City in I think 2019 was, so the year before the pandemic,
Yeah,
I believe,
pre-pandemic.
was the last time I was there. And I basically, it was one of those shows. I feel like if you're from Portland and you're living there, you have a better chance of your overhead is a little lower because you're not spending too much. Did you stay in a hotel or just go home at the end of every day?
Yeah, I stayed at a hotel, the one right across the convention center, so I was
Oh,
able to
wow.
just bring my stuff
Look
over.
at you, fancy. When I had to, I had a friend who lives out there. I used to stay at his house with him and his
That's
partner. And but the last time I was there, they moved to a place that was, first they lived in a place in the city, which was nice because we would just it was like a 10-minute drive every day. But then they moved to a place that was like 45 minutes away, and I was just like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, right? Because I had to like, I couldn't spend money on, and I was in the artist alley the whole time. I've never tried a boot, so there. See, it just did it again. I think when you mute,
That's me.
it switches
That's
us
me
on
when I'm muted.
screen. Yeah, Ren,
Sorry.
you can't
Had
see
a
what's
cough,
going
wanted
on.
to mute to be nice.
Every time he's coughed and muted his in the middle of these calls, it switches our screen. So now, when I look this way, it looks like I'm talking to nobody again, and if I look this way, I look like I'm talking to my window, but I'm actually looking at Andrew too.
Is it only when it's muted once and after that it doesn't
I don't know.
change?
Try it again. Let's see what happens. And cough while you
Oh
do it.
goodness.
Nope. It's just a one-time deal, I guess.
Oh, good.
It's so
I guess I should just do that ahead of time.
It's so weird. It's such a weird glitch.
Technology is
Otherwise, I
weird.
wonder if it's just like as it starts rolling, it just does that. Doesn't matter. Everybody knows who you are. So,
Yeah.
but back to the convention talk.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about so you were asking me last night actually about whether you should do anime cons versus comic cons. And then, so if you look at it, I look at it in 3 sections, right? There's the anime con. I'm going to say that over again. Four ways to look at it. There's the anime conventions. There's the comic con conventions. There's the very specific IP type convention like Gen Con and Dragon Con, where they have the art show, right? And then you have then there's a mixed bag of everything else. You've got like the furry cons. There's like My Little Pony conventions. There's Transformers conventions. There's a He-Man convention, right? And then the video game convention. So but I feel like those aren't as big as those first 3 that I just listed. And the way I would look at it, and this is advice for anyone who's trying to do conventions, is you got to do them all and see which ones vet you the most. It's not even about money, because what you're trying to build right now is your base, right? Your fans. Your true fans is what you really need. There was a calculation that was done years ago with some of my friends where we were like, let's say you don't want to do conventions after a while and you just want to generate money online, which is the goal here for myself as well. You want on the very minimum, you need at least 150 to 200 true fans. Those are the people that are going to buy a print every time you release it, or a pin every time you release it. That's going to generate decent money for you, right? You go over that number, you're generating a lot more money. Like you do a Kickstarter, you're already funded in like an hour. There are some artists out in our industry that can do that, right? And it could be anything. They'll be like, I'm launching a Kickstarter for scarves, and that thing will fund in like 20 minutes. But that's achieved from doing shows where you build your mailing list, you figure out what fans want. My stuff, I used to always do Comic Cons, because in my head I was like, I grew up going to Comic Cons. I never even thought about doing Dragon Con or Gen Con for the first couple of years. And then I happened to work a Gen Con one year, and I was like, I don't know what the hell's happening here. This is amazing. It's its own specific. Anyone's been to Gen Con, it's a specific vibe. The art show is all individual IPs. You won't find fan art in the art show unless that artist worked for that IP. Dragon Con was the same. If you're in the art show there, it's all their own properties, unless you worked on that IP. Bruce, how do you say his last name? Bernese. So he's worked on The Witcher. He's worked on D&D stuff. And I can't remember the third property. Magic.
Slay the Spire.
Slay the Spire, which is a big one for him, right?
Yeah.
He had all those available at Dragon Con and Gen Con, but he also worked on those properties, right? And those kind of shows do really well for him, like myself and him. We've built up our fans over the years. Comic Cons, for example, I'll do C2E2, which is here by ReedPop, which is in Chicago. I do decent at it, but I don't do great. And I think it's because when people go to a Comic Con, they want, some of the stuff you had at your booth, Rimless, fan art stuff, that's what they want at a Comic Con, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm not dissing anyone doing fan art. I started out doing fan art for the first year and a half, 2 years almost, right? So I switched over.
But it's a specific audience that wants that.
It's a specific audience.
What you find at Dragon Con.
That's what I got.
Also, decide if that's what you want to do. If you're there's artists who I know, Tony Moy is a good example of this. Tony did a ton of fan art, and now he works for DC. He does covers for DC. That's what he wanted to do. So if there's something specific, right? If you're doing fan art, don't do fan art just to make money off of fan art. If that makes sense. I always have to do the art because you love making art, and then everything else will follow. But do that specific thing you want to do. In your case, your own properties, your own IPs that you've been doing in class and stuff. I think you said that the fans were really gravitating towards all that. So phase out the fan art slowly,
Yep.
phase that
That's the
stuff
plan.
in, but then you got to do your own. You got to do like do the anime. Try you're in Seattle, so I don't know what anime conventions over there.
There's Sakura Con, that's the big one, and then Emerald City Comic Con. And there's a
So
few
yeah,
smaller ones that are popping up now.
so
But those are on my
try
list.
doing those, and then just you're doing a 2-part equation here where you're trying to figure out, did I make enough money to cover my expenses and make profit, and did I garner enough fans from that? Like, were you struggling through the whole show to make the money, or was it just like a Gen Con, for example? I do really well. I make a sale there like every 3 to 5 minutes, but I've built up the fan base there over the last 5 years. So my first time at Gen Con, I didn't do as well as I expected, but I didn't do bad. But it was like, there was a minute where I'm just like, boy, I'm failing miserably at this show. But my stuff was too new, right? People were like, I don't know what the hell this is, which is goes for any artist.
It happens, yeah.
Yeah, it happens. So yeah, it's just a matter of figuring out, and then you'll the other thing you'll figure out is like you did Rose City, and you might do really well at it. I didn't do so well, so it's like, do I want to come back or not? C2E2, if it wasn't in my hometown, I would not go back to it. But I'm just like, I'm from Chicago. I need to have a presence at the show so I can talk to the local fans and my local friends and that show up. If it wasn't here, I'd just be like, I'm out, because I just don't. It's one of those shows where it's like, if I had like Spider-Man or Batman at my booth, which, by the way, people ask me all the time when they come to my booth, hey, do you have a Spider-Man, or do you have like a Green Lantern? And sometimes
have
it's
you run into that too?
Sometimes it's old fans, right, who remember the fan art, who are like, hey, do you have that Green Lantern you had back in the... But sometimes it's people just looking at my style and expecting me to have. It's just like a weird ask, right? And you're like...
I did get asked that last week also, like, oh, do you have anything of this? I'm like, no, but I have these things here.
Yeah, I got all this other cool stuff you're looking at.
And then they leave.
Yeah,
that's expected.
I get a lot of back when I was doing cons, I got a lot of like, wow, this is great, I'll be back later. And it's like, yeah, you're never
they're never coming back, right?
You never come back.
I'll be back later, or like, this is my first day looking around, I'll come back later. There's a rare like 10%.
I actually had a
take that back. I had one person do that.
Yeah.
Where they actually did come back later, and they were like, I just couldn't stop thinking about your sketchbook. And I was like, oh, cool.
Sometimes I see people, what I'm seeing more is people writing down booth numbers, and when I see that, I'm like, okay, this person's definitely coming back, because they actually wrote it down.
Yeah, I actually had a good number of people come back on Sunday, which is why my Sunday was a lot better than Saturday, because because something I do is I stand like 99% of the time, and if someone does come over, I talk to them a lot, like form a really memorable conversation or interaction. And usually on Sunday they're like, hello, I'm back, or I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you for coming back and such. So
yeah,
I think that
I mean, like, the what was I gonna say is the sitting and standing thing. I always tell people to stand as much as you can, because if you're sitting, people just don't want to interact with you, because they're like, oh, this person's sitting, they don't even talk to me. Well, some of the artists in our industry,
they seem like they're busy or something. Yeah.
Well, some people, like, I think Tawny has this, and I think Steven has this. They have high chairs, like director chairs.
Okay, that's not bad.
Those are good.
Which I think is not a bad way to do that if you're going to have to sit down, because they just need to be able to see you, right? Sometimes when you're sitting down, they don't even see you back there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So also, if you're standing up, you look like you're ready to interact with them.
One thing when I first, this was like years and years and years ago, like 3 art styles or 4 art styles ago, when I was first starting to do conventions, I was very much, I was not a stander. I was very much a sitter, and I also liked to draw at my table, because I was like trying to, I guess, like, get commissions at the time, because I was more in the comic industry at the time. So I was like, oh, this is what everyone does, kind of thing.
Right.
The only person I remember, though, that I really like their setup, but it's unwieldy, and I don't even think he does conventions anymore, was Paulo Rivera had a setup where he basically had a giant mirror above him.
Okay.
And it was angled in such a way that you could just look at the mirror and see what he's working on the table.
Oh,
because like Yeah, because he was like, he always like, by the time I saw it in person, he would always have like a list of commissions racked up for that convention that he had to
Right.
get through. And so he
Right.
was working on them constantly, but he was like, I don't want to be like, that was his way of solving, like, I don't want to look like I'm closed off or like, don't talk to me kind of thing.
Right.
So he basically had this carrying around this like full length mirror almost
Yeah.
that is like held up on like two aluminum poles and it's like angled. The whole thing, like you look at it at a distance and you're like, this is some Final Destination shit.
Right.
For
Yes, it's
sure.
gonna fall on him.
Yeah.
Guillotine his
Oh,
head off.
But I thought it was a good conversation starter because it was so easy to see like what he was working on
That's
while
just
there.
like Gen Con. Nen Chang does a setup where she always has an assistant working the booth itself, and then off to the
Hmm.
side there's her easel, and they're working on it. So basically, essentially, their back is to you the whole time, so you're like standing just behind them watching them paint.
Do
So
they have like a really large booth or like what is that
it's just in
floor
the art
space
show.
called?
She usually always ends up in the corner, and then she sets up the easel in the corner there, and then they just make it work. And then there's always an assistant because their back is turned to you now, so they don't see customers approaching.
Right, you can
Right.
easily you can easily miss them.
And
yeah, makes sense.
if you've ever met Nen, she's very much like outspoken and like she just does what she wants, because they're always like this giant arrow. This year there was this giant. I wish I had taken a photo of it. There was like this giant arrow on the floor pointing right to her, like. And I just walked over like, what is this? Like it was like dead center in the middle of the aisle, and I was just like, no one's gonna give her a hard time either because she would probably tear you a new one.
That is so interesting.
But it lets you stand behind her and like just really see the process versus this dangerous ass mirror setup you just described.
I don't think he does that anymore, but I actually don't think he does
I wonder if it
he does
fell.
conventions anymore either.
Oh, okay.
I
One
think
of my
I think it
favorite,
was
one of my
like heavy, and it's a mirror, so there's a risk of shattering. But
I guess when you reach a certain level, you get away with things like that. Because I remember I worked at Dallas Fan Expo. It was my first time working Dallas Fan Expo. And it's the first show I ever did on a Friday that didn't start till... It started at like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So
Oh, wow.
like after hours. Like, and I want to say 6 because people had to work till 5, right? And I remember my cousins and I were there at 3 setting up. And I was just like, this is the weirdest show. Why is it starting so late? But I remember that across from me was this guy. I want to say his name is Kenneth Rockefort. Believe his last name is Rockefort. He draws it.
okay.
Moleskine makes those tiny notebooks, like they're like this thick, and they're just
Yeah.
these tiny journals. He draws very elaborate, like
Oh.
comic. Just look him up, man. It's like insane.
Okay.
And I remember looking at it, like he showed me his. Now he draws larger, I believe, because maybe his eyes are going bad. But he'd be on the airplane and he'd have this tiny notebook. He'd just clip it. He'd draw like Wolverine, like full Sentinels,
Oh
and I
gosh,
was
I'm
like,
like a tiny little...
yeah, they're small,
Dang, that's
and
impressive. I could not do
but
that.
he would walk in, like I remember on the Saturday, which would be the busy day. My cousin and I were just watching this line of people waiting for him. Right, doors opened at 10. We're sitting there waiting. Like it's like 12:30. This dude still hasn't shown up. His fans are so loyal to just stand there waiting. He shows up with his sunglasses on, like his hat on, like a rock star.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
just like sits down and does his thing. And I was just like, man, people really. And the only other artist I've ever seen do it beyond that, move beyond Kenneth, is Jason Engel, who's been on the show before. Like at Gen Con, his assistant is there just setting up. Jason just shows up like an hour and a half later, and people are just waiting. And I'm just like, I kind of want to be at that level someday, just to be like, I don't think I'd be late for my fans, honestly, maybe, but I still would like that. It's just so cool to see like how many people are willing to wait for that. And I'm just like,
that's
Yeah.
that's a
really
specific
cool.
level of fan. And he, Jason's a big time magic artist too, right? So magic artists are crazy. And I'm probably gonna get reamed out for saying that, but you guys are all nuts. I'm sorry. Like the amount of like I'm slowly getting. I told you about this. I'm slowly getting back into Commander, And I was talking to Josiah earlier, and I'm trying my best to not fall back into buying magic cards over and over. Like, I'm like, these are good.
That rabbit
I'm
hole.
good with this.
Yeah.
Well, he was like talking about these. Him and Andrew were on the call earlier. They're talking about these, like, not this Andrew, Andrew Thompson, about this card and that card and this card and that card. About half an hour or so, and it was like, I don't know, 10 minutes. It felt like an eternity because I had no idea what they were talking about. And then Andrew was like, "Oh, we should not be talking about magic cards because some people on this call don't." I'm like, "Please change the subject." like I'm gonna boot both of you guys off this call. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with this, but
Convention setups like standing versus sitting. I think that's where
standing
we
versus
started.
sitting. You had a good setup. You had you did the exact things I learned to do. So I don't know if you looked at a bunch of setups before you set up.
Yeah, I looked at a lot.
Okay.
I think there's a period. I think when I was still. I think it was August maybe. I just looked at a whole bunch of people's setups and just kind of studied them, like parts that I liked, parts I didn't like. It was also
Yeah,
just fun
totally.
for inspiration. Like, okay. And I remember, I think my first one, I had some of these stickers just kind of on the table. They're not really flat, but it would take a bit to notice. But then
Right.
the second time I did that one, that was the same small makers fair. I put it at eye level, and man, they sold like hotcakes.
Yeah,
And
you want
it's just
as
so
much
cool.
standing as possible.
Yeah, those small changes just to get things at eye level. I'm like, okay, that's a good thing.
Well,
And
the theory behind that
yeah.
is people don't want to walk up to your table to look at stuff. They want to look at it as they walk by it. And if they feel if they're about 5 feet away and they can see everything, they feel safe. Like you're gonna eat them if you walk up to their booth. Some people are probably afraid of the pressured sale, right? Because they probably walked by a bunch of booths and people are like, "What can I sell you?"
Yeah.
And you're just like, "Hey, welcome to my booth." I always tell my assistants, and I do the same thing, which is don't pressure the sale. Talk about the brand. Talk about ancient ones. Like, I want people to like the art,
also.
and that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I didn't even mention prices really. I think I just
You don't
talk.
have to.
Yeah, you don't have to. Just gotta talk with the people, get them into your world, because they'll often ask like my original stuff. They always ask like, "Oh, what's this from?" or "Is this blank from blank?" And then that's when I can give the elevator pitch, and they're like,
Yep.
"Oh, that's cool." And then they'll start asking more questions, and so then like, "I'd like to get these two." I'm just like, "What? Okay, 1 second, I'll get them." And
Yeah, you got to keep that like blank face. You're like, I'll wrap those right up for you.
Yeah.
But I remember before when I first made my bigger sales, I'd be like, "Really, you want to buy that?" And I'd be like excited. But then my friends,
that comes across as like, why do you want this?
yeah, why do you want to spend $1,000 on that? I wouldn't spend $1,000 on that. But it's just like you realize that they like the art, and but I had artist friends who were like, keep your composure, man. I'm just like, sorry, just excited. I did realize yesterday in class when that came up how many people don't have an elevator pitch for their series.
pitch is
Like,
so important.
It's Sean Murray taught me that. It's one of the first things he had me write when I started sitting down with him for world building stuff. It's like, what's your elevator pitch? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That pitch that it was on my Kickstarter. I shared it with Alex last night. I had to rework that thing over, like, it took me 2 or 3 weeks just writing it, rewriting it. And I even rewrote part of it before the Kickstarter went live. Because as I was reading it, I'm like, this could sound better. And I realized last night that it's nowhere on my website. Like, I have no idea why.
I always struggled with the idea of like doing the elevator pitch thing because I always was really unsure about how to like pare that down and stuff. But
you only need it if somebody asks you to tell them about your series, right?
Yeah, like even then, like an elevator pitch is, especially like if you are. This is very true. Like if you're trying to write a story, I feel like, as opposed to like just general world building things, because I feel like that's a harder thing to tack down unless you have like a decent narrative for it. But if you have a narrative, like an elevator pitch is good because it also helps you just kind of frame it. And like I recently heard, oh shit, who are the two people? Trying to think. Crap, what's his name? The director of Godfather. Who is that? I forget his name.
Scorsese.
No, Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, Coppola, yeah.
Oh,
Wait,
okay.
yeah. You're right, Coppola.
Like, no, that's not him. Yeah, no.
I'm glad I could
Francis Ford
take you there.
Coppola and a couple other people like talk about this idea of like when they're writing screenplays, they what I've heard one person talk about is like they have a controlling idea, which is usually like a one for them it was like a one sentence blurb about like what is the overall theme of this screenplay, and they try and stick to it.
Right.
And Coppola does a similar thing where he's like, what is the I think he actually uses the same phrase, like what is the controlling idea of this? And in his case, he has like it's a one word emotion tied to the whole thing, or like a one word like noun or whatever has it. He
I'm
tries to
curious to
usually
what that
stick it
one
to like
word is.
emotion. Well, like
Respect, probably.
Godfather. No, I think Godfather was like family or
Oh, yeah,
something
that
else.
works.
He tries to keep it to an emotion.
Right.
Like at least with him, whenever he tries to write his screenplays, he tries to keep it to an emotion, and then that gives it more of a drive than being like if you say it's like if it's I always I always hate to rag on it, but like whenever I think back to the second and third of the new Star Wars movies, like all their promo videos, they're like, "Oh, it's about family. It's about family." It's like that is so vague. What does that mean, though? It's like family means
Yeah.
anything.
Did they
It could
say that
be
about
good
Star
family.
Wars?
Yes, yeah.
I definitely don't remember those pitches.
Oh, it was like constant. Like any of their like behind the scene featurettes, whatever they did in the lead up to the movies
Okay,
themselves, they're
sure.
like, "Oh, it's about family. It's about family." It's at the end of the day, the story is really about family, and it's like, but that
Okay.
is, it's such a vague term. It's like, what does that mean? Is it because like you can have good
I
families,
think that's a
bad
little bit on
families,
like
abusive families, loving families?
right. Well, Lucas is every time they interview Lucas, he always says Star Wars is really made for the kids. Like initially, his thought process behind it was Star Wars is made for children, and these adults getting mad about it. Like I'm just like,
Yeah,
maybe.
but like it took me until hearing that though the idea of like controlling theme or like the one word idea thing that helped me really I guess like kind of figure out how I want to craft elevator pitches
You
because I
can
always had a
help me with
trouble
those
like
prompts later
summarizing
then,
my thoughts.
since you're really good with the one words. I
Yeah.
sent you those prompts. I won't say much about it live, but basically, I'm working on a
Those are
project
something else.
where the company sent me one word to describe this whole illustration I have to do times 24.
Oh.
So there's 24 words,
Oh.
and each
Oh
word is like
my.
one whole illustration. I think I showed part of it in
Actually,
Scott's class the first
you,
night.
you know what I think like the issue is like without naming names on any of this like do you know what I think the main issue is with those nouns or sorry yeah with those one word prompts they're all nouns
They're all nouns, yes.
and that
And
is the issue that's the same thing as like if okay like you can have it be like it's like a passive it's too passive it's like not nearly an active enough verb or an
right.
active enough
Mm-hmm.
word to be like it's
So
this.
So this is a prime example of when you're working with a company and you don't know what they want, definitely email the AD and say, "What the fuck does this mean?" Like,
Yeah,
because there's words in there where I'm just like, "How does this translate into an illustration?" Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not rude about it at all. I'm super business oriented when I send these emails, but in my head, I was just like, "What?" So I'm just like,
Yep.
"Explain this to me. Like, what are you thinking?" When you wrote
yeah,
this word down. And mainly there's a designer, the guy, the person who created the game is part of the team, right? There's a team there's two ADs and the designer. So I email all three of them and I say, here's a couple words some words are fine. Like I can figure it. Like if you say something like, you know, I guess I could say some of the words, but one word is like death. And for death, that's the piece you saw in classic. I had that graveyard, right? So like I said death,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
graveyard. And they were like, cool, good job. But then there's some words where I'm just like, the hell does this mean? How does this correlate? So I sent out an email, basically, like I put those. It was like 5 or 6 of them, and I'm just like, those will be the last 6 I create. And I sent them an email saying, tell me what you're thinking, because then let me get in your head for a second, because I know what I
yeah,
would do. But it's also a matter of like, I'm realizing this after the first few is like you don't want to create a thing and then they're like this is not what we thought, which happened with one, and I'm just like great, I'm glad I spent a week on this. So don't let that happen to you. Um, but this project,
two-way communication. Yeah.
yeah, you got to have that
Right.
communication with your art directors. I don't know if you're interested in doing any freelance work on top of what you're doing
Yeah,
for
I was
your
gonna
own.
ask, have you done any freelance, or you just been doing your own thing so far?
Yeah, I have done freelance in the past. I did like a series of small little mini chibi characters for Ghostfire Gaming. Actually,
Oh, cool.
I did that for like 2 years, but I got tired of doing them. Like I'm so tired of doing these characters, so I quit that one. I've also done illustrations for YouTube videos. There's this one called Man on the
Oh, nice.
Internet. They do a lot of taking video game music and turning them into musical style pieces. So if you yeah, those mostly fan art stuff. I still occasionally
Right.
do stuff for them, but it's more on and off. They haven't been doing stuff that interests me lately. So
Hmm.
then a few like independent D&D creators on DM's Guild I've also done in the past, but
That's cool.
now I'm really trying to do a lot more of my own brand and stuff. But I am interested in potentially book covers and if there's some kind of cool gaming job, but I'm being very
Yeah.
picky because I
No,
already have
be
my
picky.
full-time job and then I'm trying
Yeah.
to do my own
That's all I even
illustrated
wanna
novel.
know.
So yeah,
I mean, the work, like your work's solid. Like
Yeah,
like
it's great
oh,
stuff.
thank you.
yeah. So I'm like, like every time you show something in class, Scott's blown away by it. The piece you did in class last semester, where they're all like sitting on the couch looking. I forget what they're looking at, like a artifact or something.
Yeah,
I was
they're
like, this is
working on
cool.
something together. I can share that one in the chat.
And like like just the
Is it? There's
like you're really good with interiors too, which is cool, which I suck
I
at.
love drawing
Yeah.
interiors.
So
Yeah,
I
I
I
find
have a
drawing.
piece with
Yeah.
tavern that I
Yeah,
still haven't
I
finished.
like this one a lot.
Yeah, I find drawing backgrounds easier than drawing characters actually. Like this
Sure.
piece here, I don't know if people can see it on the video, but I spend more time drawing the characters than the background.
I don't know
I'm
if I can
so picky
share.
about.
Let's see.
Really.
'Cause I'm so picky
Um,
on anatomy and things, but the background, since it's so messy, also like everything's scattered, I can just kind of yeah, just put some stuff there. It doesn't have to follow perspective. It looks cool. So
I'm
Let's
I'm
see.
curious. What's your influences? Like what were the art things that kind of made you go, yes, I like this, and this is what I would like to do.
let's see. So I think a lot of it is definitely anime. A lot of Studio
Hmm.
Ghibli influence, but definitely
Okay.
a lot of anime influence. A lot of Disney as well. A lot of a lot of Western 2D cartoons. Like I think the classic
Yeah.
DreamWorks stuff I really like as well. Then oh, there's some
I
other
I
influence. Video
asked
games.
because
Yeah.
I was gonna say I asked because like I feel like especially that love of backgrounds, like that is something you get from someone that's like really likes animation because you
Yep.
get a lot of like production design stuff like that
Hmm.
where it's like, oh wow, this is really good. Where I feel like when I see people that are more like illustrator influence, it's like, yeah, just gonna avoid drawing that room if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, the number of people who go up to my booth or talk to me like, "Oh my gosh, your backgrounds are so good. Backgrounds are so hard." I'm like, "Okay, here's the tip. Think of backgrounds as characters, because they have
Actually really
like
good, yeah.
perspective and anatomy. They have backstories. They have personality as well." And they're like, "Oh, that really helps. I kind of want to draw a background now." I'm like, do it, draw the
Yeah.
background. It's fun. It's good for you. So I think that's where I get it from.
Yeah, I mean, like, I need to get better at interiors. I'm looking at your interiors, and I'm just like, 'cause I still have that piece for Bastion where he's in a tavern. In that tavern, I got like 80% of the way through it, and then I was just like, oh, I don't want to draw this anymore. Like, and Scott's like, you just need a chair here and a mug over here and stuff. I'm like, I don't think that's gonna do it, man. Like, there's still so much to do. Can you guys hear that kid screaming in the background?
No, I
I
don't hear
wasn't sure if
anything.
that was yours or mine.
It's mine.
It's me. No, just kidding.
It's like
Yeah,
they just wait. Oh, he's going to start recording. Let's crank it up to 11.
perfect time. But
Yeah.
yeah, that cover there, that's actually the cover for it was my slice of life steampunk fantasy illustrated novel. That's what I tell people at
I
Hmm.
like that.
conventions. Yeah, and that was the bestseller at Rose City, and then the one I just sent was also another one that sells pretty well. So
Oh
I
yeah,
figured, you know
definitely.
what? I just need to do I just need to focus on the originals and just keep doing the super detailed backgrounds because that's what I love doing and that's what people seem to like. Only issue, it takes so long for me to do these.
Yeah,
So
they
I
do.
mean, everything. It's just like look at any piece Scott does. It takes him forever, right? And you enjoy it. That's the key, right? You're not sitting there
Yep.
like, oh
Yeah.
my god, this is taking forever. Like people are like, how do you sit there drawing so many shapes all day? I'm like, at some point, it's just fun. Like, do
Mhm.
I have a good time when I have to get very detailed? Not really, but I still enjoy the process of it because, like, when you step back, you're like when Scott was saying in class last night, where he's like, these are getting much better than what you did last year, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm spending a little bit more time on them. Also, I'm getting better reference, and I've been taking a lot of my own photographs if
Oh yeah,
the
that's
thing I need
good.
is available to me, right? Like graveyard piece was easy. There's cemeteries all over the place, you know. And
And
then the
yeah,
pieces I did with the
yeah.
lantern, I just got real low on some of those shots, and took good reference, you know. Spacesuits I
Yeah.
don't own, so that's a whole different thing. And I definitely don't own a horse, so a centaur. That centaur is getting done this term, so
God, yeah, people really can really see the passion you put into stuff. Like all the ones that I put probably more time into, I found people really gravitated a lot more to them, and then the ones I kind of half-assed or didn't put as much, they don't really notice that. No,
see, I
it's
get half and half.
yeah.
Like there's pieces that
Like, yeah, I
so
guess it
my two
depends
most
also.
popular pieces are right now are Merrick, who's the fairy artificer that I did in
Hmm.
Scott's class, and then the Tree of Ardalore. And the Tree of Ardalore took me like maybe a week and a half to finish,
Ooh.
roughly, maybe two. But
Hmm.
Merrick, you saw it took me 14 weeks in class to finish, right?
Oh, oh
And
wow.
so then sometimes the Ardalore tree sells all day. So I'm just always like, man, should I be not spending so much time on things?
That's also an
Yeah, I guess that's a
easier
balance.
read, I feel like.
Some people think it's a mushroom cloud for some reason. To
Hmm.
to throw your theory out the window, like I don't know. Whenever
Well,
they
like,
see a mushroom cloud, I'm
well, I
like,
mean,
how do you
like,
see a mushroom cloud
I
in
mean,
there?
like, graphically, like when I imagine it, it's like it's a centrally located subject matter.
Yeah,
It's not really like a whole lot of crazy stuff in the frame. It's very cleanly framed and stuff compared to your Merrick piece, which I think probably takes a beat or two longer to get a
to
visual read
move to
on.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm
Whereas
always
like they can
surprised that
see
the
that and be
easier
like, oh yeah.
pieces move. I'm just like, how much time should I really be spending on these things? But sometimes you guys spend time on things, man. It's just what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Yeah, I think I have like a few that I spent a lot on and are not selling those. So yeah, I guess it really is half and
Yeah,
half.
like
And
the what's it called? The
yeah,
piece that you did in class.
each
Uh,
one.
it is called. It's the one with them sitting around the table, and then I don't know.
Yeah, that one. The one I just sent in. Yeah, that one.
Uh,
Yeah, that one.
I mean, I just love like if you look at it, I just really like the background's got that bookshelf with a little hearth, and you're just like, I could sit there and read a book.
Yeah,
It's a cool
yeah,
vibe, man.
definitely with backgrounds. I always try to make them feel lived in and alive and such. So
Well, then this other one you show this
yeah.
explorer with the sand coming down on him.
Ah, yeah. Let me send that one also.
Like their face is so calm. I'd be a little panicky if the sand was coming down on top of me like that. I'd be like, I'm about to die in here.
Yeah,
You
this
got a
one was
clean
really.
website too, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I did a little. I learned a little bit of graphic design and such. Well, I think
Yeah,
yeah. Before conventions, I've also done a lot of these. Do you know what fanzines are? Like collaborative
Hmm.
fanzines.
yeah.
Yeah, I worked a lot on a lot of those. On like three big ones. So I got a lot of experience with graphic design, book production, merch production through there, and all that is. I'm not gonna be doing zines anymore just because of some stuff that came up. But a lot of that knowledge I got from that really helped with like
The site.
conventions and is soon going to be really helpful for when I'm working on my book. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you said, what do you do for a day job? You're an engineer?
software engineer.
Software engineer.
There
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
go.
I just love learning a lot about everything and just doing a lot. So
Yes, I mean, from
gonna have
the
too much time on
little
my
time I've
hands.
known you, it's impressive how much stuff you've gotten done, man. So that's cool.
Very ambitious.
Yeah.
Is there anything about conventions that stress you out?
It stressed me out.
Like
Ooh,
something you don't really like at the moment, anyway?
I think the biggest one, and this is probably something that just can't be helped, but seeing like other booths around me having more people at times, especially at roasting.
That's a hard one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the person next to me is like a really popular big fan artist, so they had I think all fan art, and so there were a few times where it was pretty slow for me, but I still saw them getting like they were getting like constant sales and stuff. I'm just here like,
Yeah,
but I just had to remember those people are not my audience, but my
correct.
audience also does not get from them, and this show just happens to have a lot more of their audience. So I think just
Yeah.
keeping that in mind really helped.
Yeah,
And also
exactly.
just like okay, like I also told myself like if I were doing that kind of stuff, I would be very unhappy. If I just stuck to purely fan art just to sell, I would be unhappy. So I don't have to do that. I can stick to my own stuff. This is what makes me happy, and slowly building an audience for it.
There you go.
Mhm.
Yep,
So
that's the right
There's
attitude.
other factors too with that. It's like
yeah,
they may
definitely
be
are.
busy, but then you look at their prices or whatever. It's like how that's not tenable. Like
Yeah, they had
long
much,
wise.
yeah, like much cheaper stuff than me as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, when you're
Like
trying
my,
to sell a print for like
yeah,
40 bucks or 30 bucks, and somebody's in there selling a print for 10,
yeah,
you're not going to drop your cost, right? Your cost is your cost.
No.
You're like, this is what
nope.
I want for it. This is what I've earned for it. You know.
hmm Yeah, definitely. Like or I found that my sales are slow, but they're all big.
Yep.
Like I
Mm.
don't get a whole ton, but people they always spend like dang, you're getting that much for that. Like okay, cool.
Yeah.
But you know
I
what? It
that
worked for
that's
me,
good.
so
Yeah.
Yeah. You can
probably
eventually.
another. Yeah,
I think I saw you sell your prints at 30.
yeah, they're 30 each right
Yeah.
now.
Eventually, once you're a little more well known, you can bump that up. I sell mine at 40, but I used to sell them at 30, and then people were like, sell them at 40, and I waited a whole year. Like I didn't want to switch costs in the middle of the year either, and I waited a whole year just to be like, all right. And then there was that scary moment where I'm like, I'm gonna bump it up to 40. I'm gonna see what
Yeah,
happens. And the first couple shows, it was like it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good because people were like, it's $10 is still a lot, right? An extra 10.
Right.
But then
hmm
eventually people were just like, the thing was, all the other artists around me were also selling the same cost. Um, now what's happening is some artists are trying to up their cost on playmats at 50, and I'm just like, yeah, I ain't gonna do that. I'm just gonna sit right here 40 for now. But the cost of playmats are going up, so I might
Ooh,
have to bump up my cost. I don't know if I'll bump it up $10, maybe like $5, but that's the thing you gotta think about, right? The cost of paper is going up. The cost of I sell prints, playmats, and metal. All three of those things are going up in cost, and mainly because it's getting harder
yeah.
to get them into the states. That's why I'm consistently like, what's the next product? Like I have tote bags that came in now, so I'm
Ooh,
hoping
tote
to sell
bag.
tote bags. Um, it may or may not work for me. We'll find out.
I know two good Chinese manufacturers for tote bags, so I could totally give you that if you need.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And I
tote
got
bags
dice. I'm
also on
still
my
going
list.
back and forth on dice. I've looked at so many goddamn dice samples. You would think dice are dice, right? Easy enough, but no, they're not. Like there's so many variants, and I've got so many samples over here, which is not the thing I'm gonna show off later. But so many, and you want to make them all. You're like, I want this, and that. But you really have to. I have to bring it down to three, so I can kickstart with three. I'm looking for a specific set that reads like my series. Like I want it to look like Cosmic Dice. So
Yeah, that's
Right.
so
and
cool.
there's like
Ancient
a
Ones
thousand
dice.
dice vendors on Alibaba, and I was just like, it is a rabbit hole you don't want to go down
My
unless you're
gosh, Alibaba.
serious.
Yeah.
It's the Alibaba is the one of the quickest ways to find a vendor, and maybe
Yeah.
like we found a couple of vendors on there, and it may or may not work. There's no affordable U.S. dice vendor, unfortunately.
Yeah, all the good affordable stuff is on Alibaba.
Same for the
And it's
pins.
just
Apparently,
because
you can't print pins in the states.
no, I don't
Oh
think
yeah,
there's any
you can get
manufacturing.
pins for pretty cheap in Alibaba. I have a pretty good pin manufacturer. They're like, oh yeah, mold
Yeah,
fee 50 and their unit price is only $1
50
something.
is
I'm
a
like,
mold fee. That's pretty
dang.
cheap. Yeah, apparently in the
Yes.
U.S. there's a law that states you can't use.
Let me find it.
It's something they use in the pin process. They're not allowed to spray it or use it on the pins if they make them in the U.S. So no pin vendor exists in the U.S. apparently. So
Ooh,
anytime
it's
someone
probably the
says they're a U.S. based
French.
company, they're still outsourcing it overseas to get it in.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna name drop people, but there's 2 or 3 big
I
ones here that do
I'll
that.
have to look that up later because
I
yeah,
thought it was
that
something to
is
do with the
interesting.
paint. Like it's toxic, which is like,
I
am
mean,
I like it's okay for it to be made in China and shipped to the States, but it's not okay to actually
well,
make them in the States.
well, I was gonna say
It's
the
hard
paint
enamel.
that's used is the paint
Hard
that is
enamel.
yeah, it's just enamel.
It's just enamel, exactly. I don't. It's either the
And
paint or what do they varnish it
not
with at the end?
I wonder because like
Interesting.
not for nothing like okay, you know that there's domestic screen printers in the US like the inks that are used for that shit is toxic.
Yeah,
You don't want to be
Yeah.
near that kind of crap.
No.
So it's interesting that they have issues with enamel pins if that's the case.
that's what. Now this has been years because I've got a really good vendor overseas I've been using. If anyone's seen my pins, they have yet to screw it up. So I will continue to
Yeah.
use them for now. Now I've recommended to people where they have screwed up my friend's stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know what
It
to tell you,
depends.
man.
Yeah, it'll depend on the representative you have also.
Right.
I know, like same manufacturer, different rep, different experiences. I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean, I've got like right now. So also found I had skateboards at the shows, and I was gonna kickstart them.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Dude, I gotta actually. What I'm gonna do is for all the people that already pre-ordered them, I'm just gonna ship them their boards because I'm definitely not gonna be able to launch a Kickstarter this year with all the projects I've got. But since they already paid for them at the Kickstarter cost, I'm just gonna ship them out. And I had a cool vendor. They're not responding back to me right now, so I have to. This is the sucky part. I have to go find another. I found another vendor, so I have to email them and be like, "Can you make it look like these? Because they just look too good, And they had the neon grip tape, which I really liked.
Mm.
And I don't think every vendor does that. So whatever. I'll be like, you don't get the neon. Sorry. It's just what's happening. But yeah, trying to come up with a new product at the show every X is its own thing. But make a list is what I did. I've got a list of ideas.
Yeah, I do. I think one of the big ones I want to do once I'm more established is a plush of my mascot because I found people really like the
Dude, that would
stickers.
fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you need a plush vendor, a really good friend of ours, Brian Cullen, works with a really
Okay.
good vendor. His
Okay, I'll
company's
let
called
you do
Creature
his name.
Curations. You can look him up. He's got plushies and stuff on. He does a lot of D&D. Actually, Creature Curations plushies, not D&D plushies.
Okay.
So,
So yeah, plushies on the line,
because you
but those are
cannot
such a
sell
high
D&D plushies.
those have such a high minimum order quantity. I'm like, okay, not yet, but gotta build up for that one.
Yeah, do a Kickstarter, obviously, and yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna show up in these giant boxes. You're probably gonna be sitting on like 50 boxes.
Oh yeah, I've been there before. I think the last fanzine I had like 16 big 50-pound boxes in my garage that I'm
I
so glad I
mean,
work out because I can carry those perfectly fine. But,
I'll share a photo in Scott's class next week, and Andrew's seen it, which is my pallet, 1,000-pound pallet of playmats showed up right before Dragon Con. Yeah,
oh my
it had to
gosh.
be freighted over. It had to. They
Oh my
left it.
gosh.
The first time this happened, they left it at the end of my driveway, which sucked because I had to take it apart and carry it all into the garage. The second time, we used a different company, and this guy was super chilly. Brought it into my.
Oh, that's good.
They let them bring it into my garage. So I was like,
That's
the
good.
first guy was like, I can't go past the sidewalk. I'm like, why not? He's like, this because that's your property. I'm like, I paid money for you to deliver this. Bring it into the
Oh my
garage. He
goodness.
refused. He left it right at the end of the driveway and walked away,
Soon
which
you'll need
really
a
pissed me off.
warehouse. Ancient One's warehouse.
I'm working towards that, actually. I'm working a deal with a really good friend of mine. He's hopefully going to get more space. I believe he's based out of New England. I forget where he lives. Mass, maybe? But he said he's working trying to get a bigger space, and if he does, I can start storing stuff there. He also does a lot of
That's good.
distribution stuff, so he's got connections. So hopefully I can
Ooh,
start.
that's really good.
Anyone need playmats? I got about 800 pounds of them left still.
Oh my gosh.
Sitting there. Yeah.
That's really
I
cool,
mean,
yeah.
I prepared for wholesale and have you heard of Fair?
Yeah, I think some folks I know use it and some other artists.
I
So,
just learned about that today from I saw like Tia mention it
Yeah, so I got
randomly.
into Fair. A friend of mine got me in, and then just the other day, I found out that Fair and Shopify are working together, and I have a Shopify store. So I synced them up, and basically everything I put in the Shopify store shows up in the Fair market for me. Keeping in mind, anything that the people in the Fair market see, I have to sell at a wholesale cost. Wholesale is usually half of MSRP. So if anybody wants to buy my playmats from me, as a warehouse cost, I have to sell it to them. Wholesale cost, I have to sell it at $20 versus $40, right? Because one mat's $40. But
makes sense.
If both these companies can pull double duty, hopefully they can, get away with selling stuff. We'll see. Apparently, Fair is where you want to go if you want to sell bulk wholesale.
Huh.
And it seems to be very specific. It seems to be a specific market, but I don't know, man. I mean, I'm hoping somebody sees it and says, I'm hoping a gaming shop sees it and is like,
Oh yeah,
I'll buy some playmats. I wish somebody would buy some of my books. Like, I'm sitting on a lot of books. Well, I'm sitting on about 400 copies still out of 1,000, so it's not so bad.
Yeah, I hope to get to there one day. Just again, still starting out. It's just really cool seeing what people can do with their art.
Yeah.
But,
so do you just have prints right now, or like what is the stuff that you have at your table right now?
I have prints and also some stickers of my little mascot I just sent in the chat also. Yeah, the mascot was pretty popular. I think I had one sticker that almost sold out. I've had a good number of copies.
Okay,
And
nice.
yeah, I'm hoping to make like little more small stuff with the mascot and then some of my other characters. I am going to make an enamel pin soon of the little mascot. That'll be cool. And then the other things I'm hoping to do are like tote bags. I mentioned the plushies. I have a whole list of ideas down. So
yeah, make that list and then
things are based around the book really. But yeah, I think I'll do mostly prints for now.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, start. Sorry, I have to keep looking over here because I'm trying to make sure my kid's actually sleeping. She's wild. That's what you're doing is the best way to do it. Do the what you can afford and do the lowest thing first, is prints, and then move up the next. I started with mainly prints, and then I introduced prints and playmats, and then I started doing metal after a friend's father who works for a photography studio approached me and said, "Have you ever printed this stuff on metal?" And then they did an example for me, and I was just like, then that's how metal came into play. And there are days where I don't want to do metal because it's so heavy to carry around at shows, but it sells well for me, so I'll keep doing it until it doesn't. And then, like now I've got my book too, so there's more weight. Everything I have is heavy, which sucks. But if you can get away with making mass sales on prints, man, that's a win. So,
yeah, especially since, I can't drive to too many shows also, so I gotta think a little smart on, okay, what do I want to bring and what kind of stuff do I want to make?
Yeah.
So.
All right,
flying is such a pain.
Flying to a show is one of the hardest. Nowadays I have logistics figured out to ship stuff and ship stuff back, but even that cost adds up. So
yeah.
But if you're lucky and you have friends, you can ship to them. Like when I go to like some shows, like San Diego's a prime example. The people that own the booth I work with, they live in San Diego, so I'm lucky enough I could ship some stuff to them. This year I was lucky enough that the playmat vendor I'm working with was like, "We'll bring them to you," and I was like, "Hey, that would really make my life a lot easier." And they had their grunts just bring them over and drop them off at the booth, and I was thankful for that. Right? No, there's only so many vendors who do those kind of things for you, though. So don't.
Yeah. I had a friend early on, like I don't think they do any conventions anymore. If they do, they maybe tack it down a little. But early on, when we first just got out of school and stuff, they were doing a lot of conventions. And I remember at the time, I think it was Virgin Atlantic, had a whole thing where you could check up to like 10 bags per flight. 10. So what they did is, and they were a graphic novelist, and they had a very long-standing like webcomic and stuff that was then collected into like graphic novels that they were selling in the shows and stuff. So they had just 10 boxes of books
Sounds about
for
right. Yeah.
for to send
Wow.
out. And yeah, I remember, because like I distinctly remember when Virgin Atlantic, I think, got bought by Alaska Airlines, or the other way around. Their reaction was like, "What the fuck am I going to do now?" Because they're going to do away with the 10 box or with the
Oh
10
Right.
bag thing.
That's an insane rule. Like, how much space do they have on their
10
plane for all
bags.
that?
I don't know, but yeah, they was like you could check up to 10 bags, which
That's
was like
wild.
insane.
That is
Some
wild.
person was like, "This was a bad idea. We never should have approved this."
Right?
I mean, I
Yeah.
usually when I fly to shows, what I used to do. So when I first, before I had the help from shipping stuff there, before I had to take my own stuff, what I used to do was I'd have, like with Southwest, you can check 2 bags and you have a carry on, right? And the one check, and they have to be 50 pounds or less. So the 2 bags that I checked would be 50 pounds exactly, maybe a little bit under. And one bag would be full of like all like the stuff that's, prints and playmats and all that. It's heavy. The second bag would be all my clothes. And then the third bag was when I was carrying on me that had like all my like lights and all the stuff that and it was heavy, but I was able to get it on the plane with me. And I was like, man, someday I hope I don't have to do this because it sucks. So traveling to a show is not easy. I always tell people, take what you can, create a forum, take pre-orders. Like, we
Yeah.
have friends who sell apparel and they don't travel with all their apparel. They just bring the sizes for people to try on, and then they take orders at the shows. And that's if they're traveling, flying to a show.
Mhm.
Since we're edging close to the hour mark, we can either do the tail end segment, or I can ask you, Ren, if there's anything you wanted us to talk about that we did not talk about, or anything you want to bring up regarding your art
Hmm.
or the shows. What's the next show you're at, actually?
The next one will be just like a small little Halloween show nearby. Well, that one's end of
Oh, cool.
October. But
That
then
sounds fun, actually.
yeah, I'm hoping to dress up as one of my characters for that one, which I will dub, "Oh, I'm a steampunk mechanic." Easy. But then the next big one is Kumori-con, which is an anime con in Portland. That's
Cool.
November. That's the last show I'll be doing this year. So,
So do
Nice.
you live in Seattle, right?
yep, in Seattle.
Do you ever hit any of the bars in Portland?
No, I
Do you?
did not have time to. I did get to eat at this really good Thai restaurant, very hole in the wall
Is the one
place in
there's
Portland. So
Yeah, there's one in Portland my friend used to take me to. It has like had like a swinging table, and I was just like, no one should be swinging while they're eating, man. Uh,
interesting. That
but
was
the
not the
food was
What
one I went
now?
amazing.
to.
What
The
do you
bar
mean
I
a
asked you about,
swinging table?
so like the table and the benches were like a swing set,
Oh my
Oh,
and that
gosh.
was like
I
slowly,
don't think I'd want to eat on
and I was like trying to eat, right, and I'm just like, this is weird, But the
drinks
bar, I
this
mentioned the
thing.
bar because there's a bar in Portland called the Lovecraft Bar, and
Ooh.
the when you walk in, the first is two. There's like two sides of it, but the first side of it is like told. It looks like a Lovecraftian like haunted house type theme,
Oh,
and
that's
there's like
cool.
it's like always like a band playing in the corner. And they have this like tiny bar, and they have like it's Portland, so they just have these jars of weed that you can buy. So I was just like, I'll take one of those and one of those, like. And then there's I didn't the first time I was in this bar, I didn't realize there was another room. The second time I did Rose City, I realized there's this door, and you go through it, and there's a back room where it's all like smoky and like kind of like the front bar plays like rock music, but that back bar had like kind of like a 80s vibe to it. And then there's this like middle area between the two that's got like arcade machines and two coffins that
mm.
you can't really. I don't know if anyone can climb into them or not, but it's a very interesting bar, needless to say.
It
So,
is apparently called the Coffin Club now.
oh
The
really?
Coffin Club.
Yeah.
That's sad.
No,
The
it's
Love,
still the same bar. They just renamed themselves.
yeah, but
Aw.
yeah, I guess you don't want to call it the Lovecraft Bar if you know about Lovecraft. All right, well, here, so we're at the 1 hour mark. Do you want to do the last segment before we call it? Because I'm
Sure.
probably gonna have to
Yeah.
bounce on time today. So, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first unless anyone else has anything.
Go ahead.
Okay. I've been reading.
That's a good
I
book.
Yeah, I went through this a while back, and I don't remember much of it. So I'm picking through right now, like just bits and pieces right here.
Sure.
Uh, like I like the framed ink books, both one and
Yeah.
two. This one I haven't read as much as those two, or even the frame perspective books that he also has. But yeah, the frame drawing techniques one is actually really, really good, especially if you have a lot of trouble with mark making and calligraphy.
Yeah.
And like lately, I've been feeling like mine has gotten weird on me. I've been trying to like recenter it and find it again. So I've been using that book to like get through it.
Okay. I think like the best thing that helped me with mark making was this free resource online. It's called Drawbox. It's based after Peter Hahn's dynamic sketching course. That one I did take this summer. It
I'm
was
gonna write
really
that
good.
down.
Yeah,
Drawbox.
Uh,
Drawbox.
Drawbox. I didn't know there was a resource for that. Like
Drawbox.
I like the dynamic sketching stuff that Peter Hahn, and then I forget Peter. He had his teacher also did like his teacher originally had
Norm.
a
Yeah.
workshop on CGMA before
Yeah.
Peter did it.
Yeah. Norm. I forget his name. But yeah, his dynamic sketching stuff is based on his mentor's work. But yeah, just Drawbox is what really helped me with perspective and yeah, mark making. It'll make you feel more confident. So
Yeah.
it
Oh,
is
nice.
really tedious though, because Drawbox has this thing called the 250 box challenge, and it is exactly what it sounds like.
Drawing 250 boxes.
Yep, draw 250
I saw you
boxes
drawing those boxes the other day. I was
And it's
like,
like
nope.
tumbling through space and everything. I'm sure,
Yep,
like doing all that. Yeah. I actually,
yeah.
that's really. It's been a while since I've done the dynamic sketching stuff. I should revisit that because I
Highly
liked it a
recommend
lot.
it. It helped
Yeah.
me so much. Like I'm a
I
much
might have to
better
look into that.
drawer now because of both Drawbox and dynamic sketching. And yeah, I draw little boxes as warm-ups now because
I saw that. Yep.
that 250 box challenge has cursed me.
So I was going
It's a lot.
to. So I was going to show two books that I'm reading. One is a comic book, Andrew, not X-Men. I've been talking about this before, but I've been reading. Will this show up? World's Finest.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I could
So
see
it's
Superman.
yeah. Well, Superman and Batman is World's Finest. It's old school,
Mhm.
but this is the new series by Mark Waid and Dan Mora, and both. Mark Waid is an excellent writer. Like I haven't read anything by him where I'm just like, this is garbage. It's not. He's amazing at what he does. And Dan Mora is like, you should look his artwork up, man. He's got a very specific way of drawing on it. It's very rare. Like, I love the reason I love the series is you got a writer artist combo that work perfectly together. There was like one issue where they switched out the artist, and I had met Jason Smith, our friend, had told me to read this. There's one issue where they switched out the artist, and I was like, I don't really want to read this anymore because the artist changed and it doesn't have the same vibe. And he was just like, they go back to Mora in like 2 issues, and they did, and it's like cool. I'm happy again. But so that's the comic books. But since it's a book, I'm gonna show you two more books that I'm reading. But not reading, but this is more like an encyclopedia. This is the old version of this book. It's
Ooh.
Ari
Oh, that's
Salvatore's
interesting.
Reader's Guide to the Legend of Drizzt. And the old version of it,
Okay.
isn't that big, and it's got all the characters and like the
Ooh.
artifacts and stuff in it. You can pick this up on Amazon pretty cheap these days. But I have a friend who told me they put out a new one. So there's this new one. It's a visual dictionary to the world of Drizzt, and this thing is fat. Like there's
Oh yeah, that's pretty. It's like an inch thick.
there's tons of stuff in here. And if you're looking for like world building
Ooh.
or character building, like this is like just icing death. This is the main dragon that they fight in Icewind Dale. Like, and his sword is named after it. But
Oh, that
like,
looks fun.
right, this is Menzoberranzan. Like this book is like worth every penny. Like Moonwood. So there's like, all these cool like things in here. Luskin. Here's a map of Luskin. Here's Baldur's Gate. So like if you're looking for like a world building book with a visual library on like world building and just solid character building, I recommend this book. It was $30, and I think I got it a lot cheaper than
Visual
$30.
dictionary. Okay.
So, but yeah, that was
Very
that's my
cool.
recommendation for the week. I
Okay.
guess we're all going to talk about books. Well, two of us anyway.
Yeah. Guess my recommendation, I don't have it on my hand right now, is the Spider-Verse art book, the
Oh
new
yeah,
movie. Yeah,
that
Into
is
the
a good
Spider-Verse
book.
art book. Oh
I
my
think it's
gosh.
in my stack back here. Otherwise, I dig it out. I'm not going to go through that stack for you though. It's in there. So
Dude, yeah, because I saw a lot of the artists on Twitter, well, that's called X, just posting all
yeah,
their stuff, and I'm like, I need to get the book, so I got it. I pre-ordered it, and it's all in there in its visual glory. It's so good.
dude, the amount of
I
people who
haven't picked
reached
it up
out to
yet, but
me
I'm looking forward to it.
when that movie came out, the amount of people who were like, "Are you doing concept work for this?" I was like, "I wish." I don't think I'm not that good, but I wish. It's the same, like I'm like, and then I watched the movie and I was just like, and then the new one came out and like a couple artists in our group messaged me. They're like, "Did you do concept work for the new one?" Because it looks like some of your stuff, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
thanks. Like,
Oh,
like I'm not in that group. I feel like I'd love to be part of that group and do some concert, but I also feel like the pressure would probably kill me. Like
yeah.
I'm not used to working in that industry and the level of stress because I'd be like, let me show you how I photo bash this. Like, and they'd be
Oh,
like, no.
if anything, they wouldn't care.
Oh, that's true. It's
If
concept art,
that's
right? So yeah,
Yeah, they
that's a
just
good
yeah,
want
thing.
like quick ideas.
That's a good
yeah.
point.
Whatever the idea is, however you get it across
Yeah.
the finish line.
Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap this up because my kid is acting up, so I gotta go look at that.
Well, cool.
Nisnow. I'm gonna say it wrong again. Nisnow.
Yeah, that's correct.
Nisnow.
Yep.
Yes. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah.
I love talking a lot about my experiences and
We'll
such. So.
definitely have you back on after you do a couple more shows because I want to know, like,
Sure,
I
yeah.
want to find out what works better for you. Because I feel like like from the way your work looks and the vibe it has, I feel like anime cons is where you're gonna shine. But
Yeah,
I
that's what I'm
wouldn't be
thinking as
surprised
well.
if if you get into try for the Arc Gen Con, I guarantee you'll get in.
Yep, that is a goal. I tried last year, I did not get in, but I am trying this year and
They
working
have
very hard
so
to.
many artist tryouts. Don't feel bad if you don't get in.
Mhm.
Like, don't be like these artists who are like, "Oh, I didn't get in." Bleh. It's like they have like 4,000 artists sign up, I think, and then out of that they have to pick like 80.
Yeah, I
So
remember an
that's the
application
comp.
fee.
That's not even competition. It's the level of how much they have to go through.
Yeah, makes
I,
sense. But I've been working hard. Actually, that first rejection was a big wake-up call for me. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna work harder."
There you go.
So yeah.
Don't work hard enough to get what you want out there, but don't work to a degree of either burnout or don't be hard on yourself. Like
Mhm.
you're doing your own thing. It's your
Yeah.
own product. So you're your toughest boss. You're your biggest critic, which sounds
Yep,
like a cliche thing to say, but if you're
but
being,
it's true.
I've been there. I've been
it's
hard on
very true.
myself. You're being hard on yourself. It's your own thing. Um, cool. Thanks again for being on.
Yeah,
Where
thanks
can
for
we
Yeah, thank you
find
so
inviting me.
much.
information on you so the fans can go look at your work?
Yeah,
Where can we find
oh,
information on you?
oh, yeah, I have an Instagram. I'm more active on there now. I can send it in the chat now. I did send you my website
Yeah,
that gets regularly updated.
say it on the show for the record. That's
Okay,
what I'm
yeah,
asking you.
it's nisnow.art,
There you go.
nisnow.art, very easy domain. And on Instagram, I am phantom underscore Nisnow, phantom underscore NISNOW. So yeah,
Cool.
I'm also on Twitter. I'm not as active on there anymore just due to it being a dumpster fire, but Instagram I am more active there. So yeah.
Solid. And Andrew.
You can find me on asidesart.com. Sign up for the newsletter there, or go to patreon.com/asidesart. My AirPod just died, so I had
I
to.
can hear that. I heard it
Oh
change.
no.
All my stuff's under ancientones.net or AllenPanakal art on all socials except TikTok. I'm gonna find that guy someday. Um, and then our guest next week will probably be Void Bug. I'm hoping we can get her on for the next session. I will double check that. We have such a list of guests right now. It's hard to say who's exactly going to be on at the moment. So
Yeah.
it's just timing at this
Cool.
point. So all right, I'm gonna take us offline. Give me 1 second. Thanks everyone who's watching. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
guys.
Ooh. Thank you.